Can Trump win in 2020? Almost a year and a half ago, the world was stunned by the election of Donald Trump. Since Trump's inauguration, we have watched as our democracy unravels like a poorly knit sweater. So fragile, it seems, it only needed one loose thread in order to undo 241 years of democracy. The question on everyone's lips as we watch Trump cozy up with America's enemies like North Korea and Russia and further isolate us from our allies while simultaneously rolling out discriminatory policies from the Muslim ban to the transgender military ban to the horrific and inhumane zero-tolerance immigration policy is, can Trump win in 2020? And the answer is yes. While most Americans only pay attention to elections every 4 years, Republicans have been improving upon one of their most successful strategies, the Southern strategy, which is attributed to Richard Nixon's political strategist, Kevin Phillips. The Southern strategy's goal was to increase political support among whites by appealing to racism against African Americans. Understanding their base, Republicans began to ramp up racist efforts in the South while creating obstacles for African Americans to vote following the Voting Rights Act of 1965. As progressive Americans were out celebrating our post-racial triumph following the election of Barack Obama, Republicans were building off of a 40-year strategy to remind white Americans of what the cost of progress was to white supremacy. And alas, Donald Trump, the birther turned candidate and then president, was born. Hate crimes were up 20% in 2016 and continue to rise under this administration. Trump began his presidential campaign by referring to Mexicans as rapists.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
And making proclamations of sexual assault. And yet, 52% of white women and 67% of white men voted for him and continue to sing his praises as over 80% of white evangelicals continue to endow him with deity-type status. As his message and policies become more rabid in their assault against people of color, LGBTQ people, Muslim Americans, women, his supporters become increasingly empowered, not by economic anxiety, but by their desire to maintain white supremacy at all cost. Even as the investigation into his campaign and collusion with Russia continues to churn out indictments like Mrs. Butterworth, his poll numbers remain shockingly high. What Trump and Republicans know is that they don't need to appeal to the masses. They need to continue to stoke the flames lit by racism in their base. With their stranglehold on all apparatuses of government and now another Supreme Court justice in play, the cards are stacked in their favor and against the American people. The Trump Republican Party is no longer using dog whistles, but bullhorns echo through the chambers of Fox News.
America's winning again because we have a president with guts.
And tonight, many on the left, they want you to believe this alleged interference is a shocking, unprecedented turn of events. But we all know that Russia election meddling is not new at all.
I think actually the public may be looking beyond the media's hostility because the president's approval rating has gone up in a latest poll, and the poll was taken during and just after the summit with Putin.
So, can Trump win? Absolutely, but only if the 50 million people that didn't vote in 2016 remain at home. He can win if Americans decide to throw up their hands and give up believing that they are powerless, or worse, being indifferent to the danger being inflicted on this nation. At the height of the Nazi occupation in Germany, prominent Protestant pastor Martin Niemöller wrote this: "First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then, they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then, they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Trump wins in 2020 if we stop speaking up.